to Brewing Success, where growth is the mission, change is the reward, and progress is the goal. I am your host, Andrea Gebhardt. I'm a former educator turned passionate entrepreneur whose desire to create impact has never wavered. I've spent the last decade teaching, mentoring, and coaching people on how to create success in their lives and businesses with proven strategies and systems that not only bring about change, but big results. When it comes down to it, teaching is my specialty, leadership is my jam, and inspiring you to live a bigger, fuller life is what I'm all about. This podcast will give you the knowledge and tools you need to brew success in almost any area of your life. You're going to walk away each week feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to step outside your comfort zone and into the next level of who you're meant to be. Now let's get into today's episode. When it comes to leadership and we think about all of the things that make a good leader, there is one thing that usually doesn't make the list. It's the one that we don't associate with good leadership because it seems like it comes with the territory, but sadly, it doesn't. In previous episodes, we've talked a lot about what great leaders do and represent, and I'm so excited that we get to dive into this one today, mostly because the sooner you can learn the value of listening, the sooner you will begin to fully understand what it truly means to lead. Most people assume that leadership is nothing more than telling and showing people what to do, nothing more than making big decisions and being the captain at the helm of the ship. It is because of this assumption that most people fail to recognize one of the most significant skills of a leader, the skill of listening. So I'm sitting here wondering if you just, yourself. I mean, I get it. It seems like an odd characteristic of a leader. It's kind of crazy, actually. Think about it for a second. The people who you identify as leaders or the people you see as leaders and or learn from in leadership positions are usually outspoken. They always go first. They jump in and take over. They get things done. They are forced to be reckoned with. We don't ever associate strong leadership with strong listening skills. In fact, I'm pretty confident in the notion that when you think of a listener, you probably think of someone who is quiet, reserved, non-participatory, and meek. The direct opposite of how you see a leader. Am I right? I'm right? The only reason leaders are able to make big decisions for the teams, organizations, and businesses is because they are informed by data, reports, analytics, and information relevant to the decision-making process. The only reason people become leaders of value, leaders of significance, leaders who impact is also by being informed. However, the difference here is that they aren't informed by things, data. They are informed by people. They are informed by listening to what they have to say, how they feel, what they think, discovering who they are, what motivates them, what ideas they have, and so much more. Leadership is more about listening for what is needed, what is required, and how we can improve. Leadership is more about listening than anything else. Listening for a leader is not just an essential skill, it's a required one. People respond to leaders who make them feel heard and seen, who make them feel valued. And that can only be done through listening. Listening is the glue that keeps the leader and their team together. I'm sure you've experienced a time where you felt like you didn't matter, where it was as an individual in a situation, as a customer or consumer, because you weren't heard, because what you had to say or express didn't matter. I think it's pretty safe to say that we've all been there in one way or another. And it makes it difficult to show up each and every day when you feel insignificant. I remember back in the days of when I was in the classroom as a teacher, I had just had my daughter and returned to work. And I would use recess time, part of my lunch, and any other break that I had to pump because I was nursing. And after the third embarrassing disruption, where I frantically lifted a leg chest high in an attempt to shield myself from a student or a janitor or a fire chief, yes, all of these really happened, with the same hope of not spilling an ounce of that liquid gold, I requested that we have a designated space at school for nursing moms to pump. I mean, 90% of our staff was women. Over 75% of them were in their baby maker stage of life. And so it makes sense, right? To do something like that, to have something like that. And yet I was encouraged to do it in a bathroom stall. Like, are you freaking kidding me right now? Would you make your sandwich in the bathroom while sitting on the toilet? Probably not. It was a need that I had, a shared need for so many different people, and there was zero concern for it. I wasn't heard. They didn't listen. If it didn't impact student achievement, it just simply didn't matter. Sometimes as leaders, we fall into that trap. If it doesn't impact revenue, production, or growth, then we dismiss it. We dismiss them. The people who make up the very team and organization with whom without we wouldn't be in positions of leadership. Think about that. Our jobs as leader isn't just to show up, it's to serve. This doesn't mean we have to acquiesce to every single request, but we do need to listen. We do need to consider. And just show that we care. I clearly remember that situation at school this many years later. I mean, my daughter is 11 for crying out loud, not because of the absurdity of the situation itself, but because of how it made me feel. Like Maya Angelou once said, people won't remember what you said or did. They will remember how you made them feel. And if you want a team that feels valued, then listening is the key. So as you navigate your role as a leader, learn to listen first. Okay, I'm just going to say that learning to listen first is probably one of the things that I personally struggle with most. If you've been around me in person, if you've worked with me in any capacity, you know that I am always so quick to jump in and fix, jump in and create a solution, jump in and offer advice, jump in and, take over, for crying out loud. And yes, some of those things, many of those things are absolutely strengths, but strengths overused become a weakness. And so for me, learning to listen first is something that I have to proactively and intentionally work to do every single day, because my innate desire, my innate response in most situations is to just get in there. And getting in there doesn't always get the job done. But getting in there to listen does. Not only does listening increase strong communication, it allows you to grow and develop as a leader, as it enables you to gain new insights and perspectives you might have otherwise missed. If you're always talking, you're definitely not listening, and then you're missing out. So let me take you through 3 types of listening styles. And here's what I'm going to say to you. There's no single person on the planet that's just flat out 100% amazing listener all the time. I really feel like these 3 listening types apply in different situations. I think that we, participate in all of them at different times with different people in different situations. But what if we could create a level of awareness of these 3 different types that would then bring attention to when we're operating in these different types and slowly work to make progress in growing as a good listener, and mostly operate in the 3rd one that I'm going to share with you. So let me break these down. So the first, this one makes me laugh. So the first is distracted listening. The kind where I'm air quoting here, I know you can't see me, but hear the other person. But if you got asked to repeat what they said, you'd probably panic. This listening happens when you put someone else on speakerphone and scroll social media at the same time. It happens when you aren't truly interested in what the other person is saying, so you nod on the outside while running through your own thoughts, ideas, opinions, and what you're going to say next. On the inside, as soon as they stop talking, are you guilty of this one? Like, oh my gosh, I don't care where you are right now. If you just shrugged your shoulders and your chin came down and you kind of raised your hand, or you cocked your head to the side like, yep, okay, me too. I am totally guilty of this one. More than I'd like to admit, actually. So the second listening style is obligatory listening. This is the kind of listening where you aren't distracted, you are making eye contact, you are hearing every word, working to focus on what the other person is talking about, but you're failing to connect with them on an emotional level because you're only listening to them because you have to, not because you want to. And I could run through a series of so many different scenarios where we totally do this, but I feel like it would put certain people in our lives on blast. I would probably say that most husbands listen to their wives out of obligatory listening. And you know it, like you've been there, we've all been there. And so I'm just going to leave that one where it is, right? We're just going to package that over here to the side, but that is definitely one type. Okay, so literally, I have to tell you a story. So literally, this obligatory listening thing just happened to me at the bookstore a couple of weeks ago. I was in the history section looking for another really amazing book to read on all things World War II and the Holocaust. Yep, sorry, not sorry. I'm a total nerd in this department. The whole era just fascinates me. So I stand up from an awkward squatting position, eyeballing each book binding on the bottom of the shelf as to not accidentally overlook the next best book I ever read. And I was standing, and as I was standing, I noticed the gentleman standing behind me. I quickly apologized for hogging up the space, and he said, "Oh, it's no problem, ma'am." Really? Ma'am? He asked me, he said, "Are you into this World War II stuff?" I said, "I am." And I told him about a few books I had read that were absolutely fascinating. And he told me about his history buff brother. Surely this guy just got to the bookstore on his Harley after having breakfast at a local diner with his wife. So now you can probably picture him. He was kind, and we shared a little giggle about politics and began talking about history. And what I assumed would be a 3-minute exchange between two history nerds turned into a 25-minute teaching on how Hitler came into power, the political happenings in surrounding countries during that time. And well, I don't honestly remember it all because I was in my hot jacket in a store with a clearly broken thermostat. Have you ever been over hot in a store? It's the worst. And distracted because my kids were laying on the ground, the disgusting carpet of the bookstore, moaning every 2 minutes in hopes that I'd make a run for it so we could finally leave. I don't remember what all he had to say because I was listening out of obligation, not out of a desire to connect or care. I didn't want to be rude. I thought about how this poor man had probably been cooped up in his house for the last 2 years, and here he is running into this girl who can carry on a conversation about Churchill and World War II with a complete stranger and how excited and relieved he must have been. This is probably why he kept apologizing for taking up my time every few minutes. My words may have said, "Oh gosh, no, sir, it's good. I'm loving this." But I'm willing to bet that my body language said the complete opposite. I was listening out of obligation. We all know what that feels like. The third type of listening is attentive listening. Attentive listening is active listening. Active listeners not only listen to hear, but they listen to learn and understand. I really want you to grab a hold of that. Listen to learn and understand. Now, let me just say this to you from somebody who's been a teacher, has several degrees in education. When you're a reader, and specifically when you're working with kids, and I always encourage this among adults as well, but when you pick up a book, if you don't decide the filter that you're going to put on when you go to read this book, your level of comprehension and understanding and what you actually get out of it changes. So for example, when I was teaching, if I would tell students, okay, now in this part of the story, we're going to be looking for examples, of cause and effect, or we're going to be looking for examples of how this character displays this traits, then they put on these goggles, they put on these glasses, this filter that enables them to look for examples of what we just called out and identified so that they are able to pick it up in the reading. Now, had we not called it out, and I just said, okay, we're going to read this next part of the story, and then asked a question, so where in the story did such and such character, give examples of such and such trait? The students would have no idea because they didn't know what to look for and they didn't know what to pay attention to. So even as adults, when we sit down to read a book and we put our goggles on or our filter in place of, I am reading to learn and understand whatever it might be. I am learning to gain a better understanding of whatever it might be. Chances are you're not going to be, you won't be able to help but finding those examples. You won't be able to help but coming across that information, and then you underline it and you circle it and you jot a little note down on the side because it's what you are looking for. And not only does it enrich the reading experience for you, but it increases the learning aspect of it, what you retain, therefore what you apply. And it's just incredible. So when active listeners decide to innately decide, right? They're choosing, this is an intentional thing, to listen, to learn, and understand. So they have an interest in what is being shared. They make eye contact. They pay attention to nonverbal cues. This is the big separator here. They pay attention to nonverbal cues to really pick up tone of the speaker, the significance of what they're talking about, the emotional state of the person on the other side of that conversation. They connect on an emotional level with the speaker. The leader gleans the most in this situation, and the speaker feels seen, heard, and valued. It's a total win-win. To be a great leader, you must also be a great listener. You must avoid the desire to interrupt and jump in. You must avoid the desire to fall victim to distraction during the conversation. You must reset your mind from, oh, what are they going to say, to what am I going to learn from this conversation? Trust me, if you take that approach alone, it's going to do wonders for you. So here are 3 simple ways you can begin developing your listening skills as a leader. Well, heck, all things, as a mom, as a friend, as a spouse, and so on. 3 things that are going to help develop your skills as a listener. So, number 1, listen. Listen until they are done speaking. Don't interrupt. Don't interject. Don't derail. Just listen, and listen completely. The whole time until they are finished or invite you into the conversation. Listen with the intent to learn and understand. We can't listen and speak at the same time. Therefore, we must not speak so we can listen fully, attentively, actively. Number 2, in a shared environment, meaning amongst a group of people, whether it's in person or on a Zoom, try allowing 3 people to speak before you give your opinion or idea. As leaders, we tend to jump right in. Gosh, this for me is so hard. Okay. So we're all in this together. Can we all be in this together? Okay, great. So as leaders, we tend to jump in, hog the mic, and dominate the space. This is not good. It is not good at all. When we do this, what we don't realize is that we eliminate the possibility of potentially the best ideas from being shared. Be the cultivating voice, not the dominating one. Number 3, anytime someone shares a concern, an idea, a complaint, a suggestion, get into the habit of saying, tell me more. Why? Because the meat of what they have to say doesn't arise in the first few sentences. Tell me more creates a space for elaboration, reasons, associated feelings, and gives insight and perspective into what is being shared and why it matters, allowing you to get to the root of what's important. This is a digging deeper question, and leaders who dig deep with their people build deeper relationships. I'm only putting together a list of 3 ways to get better at this because it is enough. Trust me. You're going to struggle with these 3 unless you already are a listening legend. And I've only met maybe like 2 in my entire life, but gosh dang, I sure hope you take it seriously. I sure hope you put it into action. I sure hope I have created a level of awareness for you that simply doesn't allow you to not make progress in this area. Listening matters. It matters to your people. And it matters to your leadership. Becoming a better listener matters because it directly results in establishing trust, motivation, modeling the right behavior, cultivating creativity, improving decision-making ability. All the things we want to do as a leader. Listening as a leader is a skill of the future, meaning the further that we move into the digital world of communication and interaction, listening, as we've discussed it to be on this episode, is not only going to be a desired leadership quality but a required one. Turn your lips down, my friends, and your ears up. We have got some good leading to do. Listen, Linda, if you enjoyed today's episode, let us know by leaving a review. This not only provides meaningful feedback, but it also helps the podcast grow and get into the ears, hearts, and minds of those who are looking to move the needle in their own lives. Growth is the mission, change is the reward, and progress is the goal here on the Brewing Success Podcast. Thank you for being a part of this community. I cannot wait to hear the ways in which this episode impacts your leadership.